take a moment to take a collective deep breath for the laughs and screams of being an inhabitant of Colombo? Follow me. Breathing, choking, and sometimes gasping. Time and again, Colombo is brought to her knees, only to grow back always with a tenacity for life. From her sea salty tangled roots, to her shoots, to her flowers, to face up to the uncertain tides of history. The 1920s was one such time, when the island of Ceylon had experienced the single largest loss of death in 1 year, with the Spanish flu claiming 6.7% of its entire population. And what was to follow in the mid-1930s was a deadly malarial epidemic that swept through the suburbs of Colombo and across the island, claiming a further 1.5% of its population in just 7 months. The smell of death, of heaping bodies, and the sheer burden of loss hung over the city of Colombo like giant wounds. Think Michael Jackson's Earth Song of 1995, or the verses penned by romantic poets in response to cold industrialization, disease, and urban sprawl. The Garden City idea was envisioned by European town planners in the late 19th and early 20th century, inspired by concepts of town planning, sociology, and science fiction, to represent a significant yet gentle wave of change through the world in a literal attempt to heal the world. This wave moved from South America to West Africa to Asia in times defined by World War I and the Spanish flu, which had snatched away 20 to 50 million young lives between the ages 20 to 40. And Colombo was no exception. The Garden City Blueprint, Colombo's first formal town plan, was envisioned in 1921. It was to span from Colombo Port all the way south toward Gaul. But it was quickly dismissed by authorities as expensive and unnecessary. But the plan bears traces to futuristic solutions to timeless urban problems, such as horizontal housing, ventilation, the mental and physical health of its citizens, and goodness and well-being of life. The plan was in response to Colombo's growing sanitation crisis that was marked by the pungent smell of refuse and horse dung being cleared up across the street sides that were filled with ruby red beetle stains. What the plan offered was quite a different reality. Imagine this: a tourist arriving at the port of Colombo would be greeted by an arch, symbolizing the city's thriving promise for the future, set against war memorials of the past. She begins her journey through a lush and verdant Colombo by the aquarium-lined Gullface Boulevard. She then moves through the flower-lined streets of duplication through Colpity to move to the south of the city, where she's greeted by a panoramic view of the Indian Ocean and takes in a fresh, sea-salty breeze at an open-concept zoological space. She then meanders by the canals of Dehiwala to circle back to her ship through Bambalapitiya and the refreshed parkways of Torrington and Victoria Park. Her final stop at the city is at the Colombo National Museum, which boasts its very own botanical garden. It was a vivid planner's dream for Asia, set in stark contrast to cities such as Bombay, where populations tended to turn inward, leading to issues of spacing, disease, and ventilation. Now, gardens have long meant different things to different people through times, languages, cultures, and political contexts. This garden city idea of the 20s was very much a colonial utopia for Asia and the Orient, like many such across the world, that aimed to provide respite from the toxicity of the concrete city. In the present, in Colombo 2023, a walk through the city will show you how the garden city concept emerges at some points, but quickly recedes at others. Now, this can only be explained due to the haphazard adoption of formal town plans from the 1920s up until the late 1940s, and why various vintage and modern buildings stand side by side, and low-income housing zones and crowded commercial spaces are located in close proximity to exclusive residential areas. The euphemistic references to Colombo as a garden city through the times and various beautification projects symbolizing it such through the years have led to Colombo being known as a garden city. However, what these several initiatives lack is a core commitment to the fundamental ideas of the garden city concept from the 1920s, which are rooted in the mental and physical health of its inhabitants and a general sense of well-being. Now, this was literally a rosy idea. However, it only brushed against the political reality of 20s Colombo. For it was a time when the island was growing an increasing anti-colonial and anti-imperial political consciousness, with the city of Colombo as a hub. So while the Garden City project was very much one in engineering health and happiness, there was certainly a tone of controlling happiness and populations that were tied to it. It is testament to a very subtle yet profound form of political and social control that exists in the built environment surrounding us. Fast forward to 2021 again, when the city, 2023, I'm sorry, when the city is again experiencing questions of political discontent, disease management, death control, and quarantine in a COVID-19 crisis. It begs the question, would the adoption of the garden city concept from 100 years ago have borne fruit now and prevented the uneven impacts of COVID-19, which tended to benefit the rich? Colombo is long known as a crossroads, and a crossroads is generally where it all takes place. It can be seen as a point where the ideas, fears, hopes, dreams of its inhabitants, and waves of welcome and unwelcome visitors through the centuries, along with movements of labor, have met, clashed, and in some cases blended. The garden city idea is one such, and although in conventional terms is regarded as a failure in Asia, for it was never adopted by the Colombo Municipal Council of the 20s, which was then on the verge of bankruptcy, it does spark a curiosity as to the transformative potential of creative ideas from the past that are shrouded in ambiguity and rejection. Be it the 1920s Spanish flu context or the 2020s COVID-19 context. Bold, innovative, and sometimes slightly anti-establishment ideas are needed in times of world in transition. The Spanish flu was not Spanish, and the Garden City idea was brought to Colombo by one Patrick Geddes, who was Scottish. History is full of its own eccentricities and time-traveling ideas. So what do we do with a 100-year-old dream and utopia that is very much connected to the built environment surrounding us? Do we dismiss it? Do we ignore it? Or do we try to adapt some of its more positive sustainability solutions to preventing our city from becoming a graveyard of falling trees and falling health, and preventing the dire reality of Colombo becoming a global hub through time, where good ideas tend to fall to decay